Welcome back to Inside Innovation. I'm Eric B. Moore. In our first episode with Brand Institute, we explored the creative process of naming and branding. Today, we turn to the other side of that equation, the regulatory journey that ensures every name meets global safety and compliance standards. Joining us again are Scott Pirgrossi, Brian Frosca, and Jack Stolquist from Brand Institute, the official branding and innovation partner of Bio North Texas. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you, Eric.
Welcome back,
Good to
man.
see you, Eric.
Welcome back.
Always a
man.
pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having us.
Let's do this again, man.
Let's do it.
You know, when we were filming the first episode, my phone was blowing up. No, I'm kidding. I was gonna we want more. No, I'm just kidding because that won't work. It
was live streamed.
Yeah, it was live streamed. It wasn't live streamed. It was recorded. But no, I knew this would need to be broken out into two sections.
Yeah.
The creative side and those processes, but also the regulatory side is equally important. And I want to make sure our audience has a full understanding of your expertise and how you approach the space. So we're going to start here with where creativity meets compliance. And Brian, we're going to start with you on this one.
Sounds good.
As divisional president, you have a clear view of how regulatory and creative teams collaborate. How early should regulatory strategy enter the process, and where are the benefits for when it does?
Sure. I think regulatory is very much guided by, is it a pharmaceutical asset? You know, I know Scott in our last episode mentioned things like our corporate ID,
Yes.
medical device. A lot of that doesn't have the regulatory restrictions that we have in the pharmaceutical space. If we're dealing with a pharmaceutical, it's start early, keep it often, and think about your global strategy from the beginning.
Yes.
That needs the regulatory compliance, and we don't want to send Scott and his creative team or a trademark team on a wild goose chase on something that can't be owned. You know, everybody loves it, but it just doesn't pass the muster. So for us, we get our experts involved early to kind of set the guardrails for us, and then we go through the process. The very last step of a typical project for us is that safety review. So that's, Scott mentioned in our first episode, we're looking at thousands of names. We narrow that down. I call it the process of attrition, where we're really just narrowing it down to our final 20 or so. That's really where we're going to get heavy into the compliance and regulatory. But again, I always say start early. Let's start with our creative, have it be part of the brief, so that we're not going down any road that isn't ownable.
So Scott will have to pull you to the
That's
side.
right.
So
and
can we talk?
I get a nice hate mail. But no, I mean, I think it's always tough to restrict somebody like Scott in doing what he does. But you heard some of the examples from the first round, right? Caplyta, things that really Tremfya, things that really have legs and are great from a regulatory perspective. Yes. It's possible. So you just start with that early. You have to know that information up front. So yeah.
Awesome. So start early.
Start early is my answer.
integrate your team early, so you don't have to clean it up on the back end.
Exactly.
Right?
Or you're scrambling.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Brian, for that. Scott, so from your creative seat, how does regulatory input shape or sometimes inspire the creative process?
Well, it's a great question. It's one of the components, like we talked about in the first episode, of many that we have to adhere to. But regulatory is particularly interesting in the drug naming process. Pharmaceuticals are the only product in the world that require government approval of the brand name to go to market. Everything else, you could trademark it, go to market with it. Yeah. So that makes it uniquely challenging, because if you come up with great creative, but it's not approvable by FDA, EMA, Health Canada, et cetera, it's all for naught, right? So it's always there, and we have to incorporate it into our process with appropriate pre-screens that are reflective of what's required by each of the respective agencies. So we have a very proprietary system for pre-screening names called Brand Reality Max. It was developed by our Drug Safety Institute team. That's our wholly owned subsidiary, formed over 20 years ago when our still CEO, James Dettori, really recognized the need for a company that was focused on servicing both the creative and the regulatory side for pharma clients. And over the last 2 decades, we've really been honing both the market research regulatory analysis, but also the upfront creative regulatory analysis, so that we present more viable names to our clients. Because if you present 100 names, none of them will work. You just wasted 2 hours of my time. Right. Now, what inspires me is I like to look at the opportunity within that context through those lenses. Okay, I know I can't do any number of things from a sound-alike, look-alike. or a promotional standpoint. And maybe we'll take a moment to define those. So
Please.
we can't create a name that sounds like or looks like another drug name. And if we're going global, we're talking over 200,000 names we're screening against. That's more words than there are in the English language.
Wow.
So imagine creating a new English word that doesn't sound like or look like another English word. That's kind of a simple way to look at the challenge. And we also can't be promotional. And that means painting too fanciful of a picture, because we're naming a drug product ultimately, or overstating efficacy or safety that's not supported by data. So those are the regulatory influences, and that's why what comes out of our process are these very suggestive coin names. I see something in there, but it's not overstating it. It's a very suggestive, invented word, essentially, is usually what comes out of the process, with some exceptions. So within that framework, if we can develop great creative that after a workshop, the client goes, the highest praise is when we get the applause at the end of a meeting.
Wow.
If we get the applause at the end of a meeting within that very challenging environment, then we know we did a great job.
Yeah,
Great.
wow. And to know that within the context of that applause, your regulatory, your sound from a regulatory perspective.
That's right.
Not
That's
only
right.
did you hit the creative spot, but you hit the right tonality or the right regulatory spot as well.
We're set up for success.
Right.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. That's a delicate
It
dance.
is
man.
challenging.
That's a delicate dance.
You watch the tightrope line all the time.
All the time, all the time.
And we do have, we have very, a lot of our clients are very experienced. So they have teams that have gone through the process before. Interestingly, for smaller companies, it can be more challenging, right? Because they have expectations of what this name is going to be, and then we have to gently show them the way. It's
Guide
I would
them,
love
right.
to, create another Prozac, but that
that's not
chapter's
gonna
closed.
happen.
Pro is the most common prefix in the pharmaceutical lexicon. It's not happening.
Yeah.
That's when you say, let us take you to lunch.
Let us-
This, right? Let us go
exactly.
beyond the
Exactly.
agenda. So, well, awesome. Thank you for that, Scott. Jack, so over to you. For many biotech companies in North Texas, the regulatory aspect can feel quite daunting, as you've mentioned before. What are the most common misconceptions you encounter, and how does Brand Institute help simplify that path?
Yeah, so Scott pretty much gave me a great transition here. Even for the most seasoned company, there'll be new teams who have never gone through with a product launch, which includes brand name development. And so there's an education part to our job where we have to manage expectations, like Scott said. That involves everything from number of names that you submit to each agency, the order in which you submit to each global agency, and then when to start as well. Some early or small biotechs who've never done a branding project before, think they're going to wait to the last second when they have all this funding. That's when we're going to start. When in reality, it's a much longer process. So as Brian said earlier too, we always say get started early. It really relatively is a low cost, low spend, and you don't want to get down to the approval stage and not have everything ready to go from a branding and marketing standpoint. In terms of getting over regulatory hurdles, there's questions that are asked to us all the time that we don't know how to answer, and that's when we lean on the expertise of Drug Safety Institute, which Scott just highlighted. So that houses all of our regulatory experts who actually wrote the guidances at FDA, Health Canada, and EMA. So these people literally created the science of how to review names. They're on our side now, and so they're at our disposal whenever we need to, host a quick meeting, just send them a quick email. You'll never be surprised about how many very specific questions that we've never seen before. We send it over to DSI to get their input, and they know right away. Wow. So it's awesome to have them at our back, and specifically for our clients too. Pretty much haven't seen a single hurdle that they haven't been able to help us with.
So not only do you have the internal expertise, you've got the relationships
right.
Across the industry that can help you be smarter for your clients.
Right.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. So that leads me to the next section here: globalization and market readiness. You talked a little bit about when to launch and all of those things, and I'll start with you on this one, Brian.
Sure.
Again, globalization and market readiness. The world is your audience.
Yes.
And your compliance landscape. What are some of the challenges in ensuring brand names translate effectively and safely across different regions and different languages?
Oh boy,
Yeah.
there are many challenges.
A lot of layers to that question.
Yes, there
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
So I mean, when you think about, so Scott mentioned having something that's suggestive, really is it based on an English word, something that we use in the U.S., the U.K., Canada, something like that? Is it, does it have roots in French or Latin or things like that? We can span all of that, and it really will depend on the team. I think some of the overt issues, we have Anvisa in Brazil, they're worried about Portuguese. We have a 3-letter rule in Mexico, they're worried about, Latin American, focus. Canada has a French component. There's all of these things involved. Our process, not only do we look at that, we start in the creative with looking at linguistics. We look at a trademark. In the market and safety research portion, we have linguistics folks. We have a linguistics panel. It looks at about 41 different languages and dialects. There's a joke in Italian that every house has a different dialect or a different. So, keeping that in mind, we are always looking for panelists, these experts, to give us opinions on that global approvability. But you do have to think about it early on. Fortunately, when we have multicultural teams or teams that are geographically disparate, they will tell us that we work a lot in agriculture in the Midwest. We have teams that are in Brazil and they'll say that's a terrible word in Portuguese, or that doesn't translate in English, or things like that. So I think that's really
the Brazilians being vehement about expressing an opinion.
Yeah, of course. I think it's a little bit of the flavor, right? A little bit of the fire. But I think you have to trust that. You have to listen to that. But your process has to account for that, and we do. I think Brand Reality Max thinks a little bit about the linguistics portion of it, but from a sound and lookalike perspective, we've expanded. There's an algorithm the FDA uses called POCA, which is the Phonetic Orthographic Computer Analysis algorithm, that we expanded to 7 different languages to account for those things, to account for the linguistics. We call that POCA Plus. So it's not just one thing. I think it's a lot of different things, and how do we kind of give it enough flexibility where we're not killing everything because of one country, but also accounting for those individualized countries as we get through the process. So that I've seen things, kind of get toward our final market and safety where we're looking at 20 finalists. One of the names has a real bad connotation in linguistics that we may have caught early on, but now we're seeing it over and over again as we're falling in love with this name. That could be a reason why we get rid of it. EMA certainly does cite things based on linguistics, and there's 28 member states, so imagine 28 different languages, all those dialects. As Scott said, over 200,000 names that we're looking at. So I think, from our perspective, it's really linguistics is important. You have to think about it early, but you also have to give yourself flexibility. And that really will depend on how much of the word you're using, different letter strings, things like that. So there really is a science to linguistics as well.
I am, I am having just a wonderful time here. We are so grateful for your partnership and your expertise in our ecosystem. It means a lot, and this is what I had hoped when you made a commitment to bring your expertise to our ecosystem and really interact with our early stage companies, our investment portion of our arm, our bigger companies and manufacturing companies and all of that. So we're very grateful for this conversation, and we hope that this is one that our audience puts on rewind, because it's an educational opportunity as well. So Scott, that brings me to you. The creative and regulatory sides can sometimes pull in different directions. Really, never.
Can feel like
polar opposites.
Never, right? How does Brand Institute maintain alignment between innovation, patient safety, and client expectations?
That's a good
delicate
dance.
Delicate dance.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, is we have the regulatory review early on for a viability check, a very gut level viability check. So that helps kind of build that early consensus from this name has a shot. This name has a good shot. Client alignment, we have a lot of innovation, a lot of tools that we've developed internally to onboard clients to both the name candidates, but to our process as well. So we find that innovation, when done well, can make a process more memorable, more engaging, and lead to better output. And our process, there's a lot of hand-holding through it early on. We don't force name retention, right? We don't go in there and they say, I don't like it, and we say, too bad, you're taking it.
This is what you have.
No, we don't. What we'll do is we'll say why we think the name works.
Of course, yes.
It's based on strategy. It's easy to pronounce. It's short. It's compelling. It's unique. When we present a newly invented word, The psycholinguistics aspect of it is for us to reject what's new in our language.
that's
we
how
want
we
to
are. Yeah.
we just want to reject it. So you have to I like to start each meeting with like an etch-a-sketch mentality.
Yeah.
Whatever preconception you came to this meeting about what this name is going to be or look like, forget it. We're going to look at each name purely, originally, and provide an honest assessment and to assess it objectively. So if you say that I don't like the name, articulate why you don't like it.
that's a bit-
I just don't like it. Now that's something we could push back on. I just don't like it. Well, you're an N of 1 out of a billion, right? So now if a client says that means something negative in this language, or it sounds like this drug, or I'm uncomfortable with how potentially promotional is, it's a little too suggestive and meaningful, probably for regulatory measure. Then we say that's a fine assessment, and we can remove that name.
Of course.
But we also want to know what you like about the name, because it is an iterative process. And we come and present our what we feel is our best work. But those workshops, a lot of refining goes on during those meetings. And at the end of the process, you would be surprised about how many times a client-created name comes out the other end. There is a little kind of self-serving nature to that, right? Oh, I could actually create the name for our product in my company. And we're fine with that, because it just gets added to the mix. It gets added to the process. So walking the client through, keeping them on target, keeping it objective. But at the end of the day, we're here working for them to make sure that they're going to be happy with the work.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall.
You're invited.
I've tried to put my name in every project, every name I've ever created. I think I've tried to.
There's a lot of Brian names.
Yeah.
Bryzana.
Bryzana, all that,
I
yeah.
could see it.
So this leads me to our last segment, gentlemen, and this has been this regulatory section hasn't been as painful as I thought it would.
No.
You guys bring joy to the regulatory process. The impact behind the process. Each of you operate in a space where a single name carries immense responsibility, impacting not just a company's success, but also patient outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
What keeps you motivated? Obviously, you've talked about how much you enjoy working together, but what keeps you motivated to do this work day after day after day? And Jack, we'll start with you.
Yep, sounds good. For us, we really like to establish deeper connections with our clients to the point where we're good friends with most of them. And so there's a satisfaction to taking this small sliver of pie off of their plate.
Yes.
We know a lot of our clients, especially the smaller biotechs, have so many things to do. They wear so many different hats. And then this is a confusing element that they probably haven't done too often. And so the ability to
Or
just...
thought about.
Right,
Yeah.
or even
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
about.
yeah.
So the ability to just say, hand it over to us. We're going to ask you for some key input at certain points throughout the process, but we'll pretty much guarantee you a successful brand name or a logo or a company name, whatever it might be. There's a good amount of satisfaction in taking that off their plate and then executing it to their satisfaction. Just going back to what I said on the previous episode too, being able to take some high science and distill that down to a manageable and consumable brand is awesome, especially from a non-healthcare professional. The general public doesn't have a very high healthcare literacy.
Yeah.
And so it depends on the product, obviously. There's going to be some products, like Scott was saying earlier, where an oncologist is the primary target audience. But there's a lot of products we work on that are going to the patient, and being able to develop a brand that is understandable, memorable, and digestible to a patient is pretty awesome. So.
Yeah, it is. And it is my hope, and I agree with you on that, Jack, that many outside of our ecosystem that are from different sectors have a chance to watch this video, because I think this is something that's just interesting across the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just not about our sector. So same question to you, Brian.
Sure.
What keeps you motivated?
I mean, if we're talking from a regulatory sphere, the same as last time, it's patient safety and the science behind it. But I think just also watching Jack answer that last question keeps me motivated.
Awesome,
It has been, I have been in the seat where I've been reading the guidance, and a small team when we've expanded at Brand Institute. Now our market and safety research team is massive. But I remember the days when Jack was sitting outside my office and I was yelling at him, and he would, but watching somebody like that grow outside of not being a healthcare professional, even sometimes it's hard for me as a healthcare professional to see some of the new science coming in.
I love that.
Just seeing people grow and learn, and that's always what's been about for me. So it's really just, it's protecting people, being able to educate them, and I think just, the pride I feel in the day-to-day. He's now become my boss at this point.
That's right. Tables
We
have
make
turned.
that joke all the time, but it is, when you become 15 years in and you've seen so much, and all new science is coming at you, it's wonderful to watch other people be inspired by that.
Yes.
And watching Texas grow, I think, has been huge for Jack, and how he's been dealing with, you've got some big boys here, big players, and then you have these really small clients that I'm watching him answer these questions in a regulatory expertise that he's sat at people's knees and learned. And I think it just shows that how great, Brand Institute, Drug Safety Institute are, how well they prepare their people. And if we don't have the answers, we know where to find them,
The market's hungry for it.
Yeah.
The
it
market's
really
hungry
is,
for it.
and it's
Yeah,
really is wonderful to see in somebody, especially someone I've worked with for so long. And anyway,
you.
that motivates me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You
Get a little sentimental, but it's
you're
true.
pulling me into
That's
this. brother.
it.
Yeah.
It's true. It's
I'm
true.
not-
I don't get to
no,
say it enough.
No,
but,
no. Thank you for that. That means a lot. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Scott, same question to you as we close. This thing is complex. There's a lot of responsibility. What keeps you motivated?
Well, in your question about the impact of our work, if you really think about it, and this is before I speak about motivation, we're having a lighthearted conversation. It is a very fun job. But sometimes when I step back and I think about the relationship that patients have with the products we name,
Yes.
and how in many cases they are putting their trust
Life-changing. Yeah.
Yes,
into this
yes,
product to
yes,
deliver,
yes.
and through that the brand plays a role in how they relate to that brand. So that's a little humbling. It can be humbling, much more than naming a consumer product, a new car. So that's part of the question. It wasn't the question though, but just to recognize that.
No, please. Thank you.
What motivates me is great creative. I think in the context, since this is the regulatory segment, beyond that, the trademarks, the linguistics, everything we talked about, to be able to develop great creative despite all that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of agencies out there that name products, and most of them say we won't touch pharma. It's just too hard.
Yeah.
It's just too hard. So we have the unique capabilities and skill set at Brand Institute and Drug Safety Institute to develop names that work for our clients. So if we can do all that and have the name be really great and kind of praised publicly, kind of capture the zeitgeist of the moment, that is epic level rewarding from a creative. And then building on Brian's point, now 22 years in the business, equally as excited when a creative colleague gets a name approved, especially when it's recognized as a great name, right? And just giving them the kudos, and they could put that on in their portfolio and say, I named that, or I led the creative on that. So it's really it's the work personally, and now as a team as well, within the department and the company as a whole.
I mean, even watching you grow, right? With BioNTX. I mean, from the new Renaissance launch at IC3 this year. I mean, that was huge.
That was a great job, guys. Thank you.
No,
for that.
but
Yes,
I mean,
thank
I
you.
think it just goes to show, like, we're constantly growing, and just being able to help in any way to watch your growth and expansion is really fun. It's fun for us to watch it from a 2-man team to a 10-man team to a 40. It is really rewarding for us to watch that
Thank
happen.
you. Well, you're a vital and valued part of that growth. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric.
Guys, thank you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you for your time.
been a
Always
pleasure.
Thank
appreciate
you for
it.
coming.
Thanks for having us,
Thank you
Eric.
for your expertise.
Anytime.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to thank Scott, Brian, and Jack once again for this thoughtful conversation and sharing how work connects creativity, science, and safety. For our audience, Brand Institute's role as the official branding and innovation partner of BioNTX reflects the spirit of collaboration that defines our region. And if you're not yet a part of BioNTX, we invite you to join us, whether it's through membership, sponsorship, or partnership. Your support fuels the growth of the North Texas life sciences ecosystem. Scan the QR code on the screen to learn more and connect with us today. I am Eric B. Moore. Thank you for watching Inside Innovation. Until next time, be well.